At the time when I set it up, there was a lack of diversity in the dance community. Partner Up is a seemingly innocuous instruction. It's good for instructors because they're not having to do a lot of work.
Asking someone to just push back against the societal norm they've been raised in, even in a very small, simple situation like that, it's not that easy.
If you give a general instruction like Partner Up, half of the class are going to have to assume about the other half.
Thomas Martin is a dancer and teacher based in Manchester. He has been dancing since 2006 and has for the last 7 years now been teaching salsa and bachata in our scene as well. Thomas is the founder and current chair of the LGBTQ Afro-Latin Dance MCR, a non-profit group that organises free dance classes for the LGBTQ plus community in Manchester. Welcome to Empowered Dancers, Thomas. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Bobby. It's great to be here.
So, Thomas, what got you into dancing back in 2006?
So I was living in Ipswich, and one of my work colleagues decided to take me to a Cuban salsa class. I'd never been before. He really raved about it. I went. It was a real great, friendly group of people. We had a lot of fun, so I kept it up, and I've been dancing ever since.
Lovely stuff. And might I also add in how wonderful it is to have another Irishman on the call with me today. And Thomas, you are the founder and the current chair of LGBTQ Afro-Latin Dance MCR. What led to this group being set up? Why did you feel there was a need for it?
I think at the time when I set it up, there was a lack of diversity in the dance community. Gender roles were a lot more traditional back then. I think we've come a long way, but I still think there's still some room to go. I like to dance with men. I like to dance with women. I like to dance with everyone. I like to lead. I like to follow. This is something that should be I think more common, more accepted. It should be assumed that one can have the freedom to dance however one wants. I think that freedom was the primary instigation behind me wanting to set up this group.
Wonderful. And once you set up the group and you started having lessons, did you notice that people were moving away from those traditional gendered roles?
So I am sort of marketing to a niche within a niche. We've got the dance community, we've got the LGBTQ plus community. So that overlap, I am very specialized here. This is a small group, but because it is advertised to gay men, lesbian women, bisexuals, uh, one can never look at someone and say, okay, this is a man, they want to dance with a woman. Absolutely, that would be the worst thing I could do. So this traditional gender roles, they're immediately out the window. This is a unique way to be teaching dance. You cannot assume that. So you have to rethink. It's more than just language. It is, how the class is taught. The very pivotal aspect being how do you go from teaching the partner work to teaching the footwork at the start, the warm up to okay, we're switching to partner work. We need to have partners. How do we manage that in the classroom?
Mm. So how would you go about managing that if you've got a new group of students that have just come in, they're starting off? How does that transition look like?
So to me, it is fairly common sense. You give everyone the option. I think if you look at the broader dance community, there is a lot of inclusive people. There's a lot of open-minded people, people who honestly believe dance is for everyone. They love dance. They want other people to dance. They want everyone to be included. Don't want to exclude anyone. But I don't think everyone has thought a lot about some of the implications of the way things are done and what things happen. And I think the worst offender of this is partner up. Partner up is a seemingly innocuous instruction. It's good for instructors because they're not having to do a lot of work. Teaching is intense. It's training. This is a lot. The less you can do, the more you can offload and have the class sort out themselves, the better. I'm sure you can appreciate that. But when you say partner work, you are saying everyone, sort yourselves out. And it's not gendered. You're not explicitly saying, okay, guys grab a girl, girl grab a guy. You're not explicitly saying that. But if you give a general instruction like partner up, half of the class are going to have to assume about the other half. So one half of the class are going to be the ones asking, if there's been no explicit way for leaders to identify themselves as leaders and followers to identify themselves as followers, then the general population is going to go back on to the okay, I'm a man. I'm going to assume that woman is a follower. I'm going to ask her to dance with me, and I can lead and they can follow, and that is the default assumption. And that is actually going to be the case for the majority of dancers, but simply giving everyone in the class the ability to choose, I think, is very important. One might counter argue that, oh, if a man asks a woman to dance and she actually wants to lead, she can say, oh, actually, I'm leading today, and that is correct, but it is important to remember that this is a social environment. Rejection, if it's not necessary, is unpleasant. You're being told, I don't want to dance with you, even if it is for legitimate reasons, that could be a negative experience for that person. So it is very simple. It's actually not that complicated. You tell everyone, oh, if you want to lead, go to this side of the room. If you want to follow, go to this side of the room. Okay, we've got roughly everyone divided, half and half of the class. Now leaders match up with a follower. It is fairly simple, and you can, while people are choosing and deciding which way to go, you can make the pitch. Oh, if it looks like there's going to be more leaders, you can try and argue, okay, do whichever you want, but if you want to follow, there's all these advantages. Likewise, if the numbers are balanced the other way, you can say, yeah, if you want to try leading for once, you have more options, you get to experience the other side. There's all these benefits you can use to argue.
Yes. Yeah, those are some really good points. That you're right. We don't want to, if someone invites us to dance with them, we don't want to say no. It's not in our social nature to do that, to cause in any way distress to the other person. So that is indeed limiting. And I like that you use the phrase, she can just say no. She can just is a phrase that we hear so often. Well, she could just do this, she could just do that. But asking someone to just push back against the societal norm they've been raised and conditioned to, even in a very small, simple situation like that, it's not that easy.
No, it's not a small ask. It's again, and it isn't necessary. It's not. I think it's worth asking why things are done the way they are. I think Partner Up has a fairly easy explanation. Like I said, it's the instructor doesn't then need to worry about it. They've other things to worry about, the lesson to plan, and mapping out what's going to happen next. Okay, class, get yourselves into partners. I don't want to be the worst thing an instructor could do was say, okay, you are going to dance with this person, you are going to dance with that person.
Yeah, they're not going to do that, are they?
It's happened. I've seen it happen.
Really?
I've no idea why one would do a lesson that way. But it is very strange.
Yeah. Also, in that hour, you want to teach as much as you can. You don't want to be spending your time partnering every single person up. So, yeah, I can appreciate where the partner up comes from. Perhaps that would work in a situation where you've got a course and you're about week 4 into the course, perhaps, and everyone has chosen the role they're going to do. Then we could use partner up if we have a known group.
Again, yeah, my strict objection would be partner up in a scenario where there's been no way for everyone to freely choose what they want to do and freely communicate that choice. So, like you said, if it's a course for week 4, everyone knows each other, they know who's leading, they know who's following, then yes, partner up absolutely makes sense. But I'd say my experience, the majority of classes, maybe it's just the classes I go to, I don't tend to go to repeating courses, but the majority of classes I go to are, okay, this is a random group. They've just showed up this week. They may not show up previous week or the next week. So
Yeah.
they don't necessarily know who's leading, who's following. In that case, I definitely prefer a partner up not be used.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably one of the most universal phrases we hear in Congress lessons at the
Mhm.
beginning of a lesson, because you've got back-to-back lessons. Teachers are going boom, boom, boom for the day. So yeah, I can see perhaps why it comes in, but I think your solution of simply separate leaders over here, followers over here, that solves it, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I think I've had the privilege of teaching classes for the LGBTQ community, and there's a lot of things I can just throw out, and I don't need to take over from the way classes are commonly taught. And, some of this is necessity, terms of like, you are not, just because you're a man, it does not mean you're leading. You're a woman, you're not following. If you're non-binary, then yes, you are not going to be ignored. But there are other aspects to this as well. So if you were to take a class of a mix of absolute beginners and some people who've danced already, to me, the ideal way to distribute the roles would be to have the absolute beginners be followers. Um,
Okay.
I, I, from my point of view, and it is a fairly unique experience that I've had. Men should not be leading when they just begin, when they're absolute beginners.
Uh-huh. Okay.
My,
Why is that?
so as a leader, what you are expected to do is control the entirety of your body and guide the body of your partner. Not control, but you are
Yeah.
having to make effort to direct what they're going to do. So you need to be in complete control of what you're doing and a little bit extra of the other person. As
Mm-hmm.
a follower, you are responsible for reacting to what the leader does. Now, I'm not trying to use this to argue that, oh, the leader's job is harder, follower's job is easy. Obviously, you get to more advanced levels, there's so much more the follower needs to do. But as an absolute beginner, if you're dancing with a lead that has some experience, they are going to help you. They're going to help you keep the timing. They're going to help you on your basic. They're going to maybe give very obvious leads for the moves. Just as a thought example, a thought experiment. If you take two dancers, one of whom is a leader with some experience and an absolute beginner as a follower, and tell them to dance, and at the same time take another couple, one is an absolute beginner leader and a follower with some experience, of when you put on the music, what's going to happen to those two couples?
Yeah, the experienced leader is going to help their follower to be more on time. There
Mhm.
will be a little bit more dance happening as a partnership, whereas in the other role, I can imagine that the timing, even the steps or when to start, is going to be very difficult, and we're not going to have much partner dancing going on.
I would argue that there's not going to be any dancing going on in the second couple, because if you tell a literal absolute beginner dancer, whether it's salsa bachata, you just take them, they've no experience dance whatsoever, put them on a dance floor, give them a follower as a partner, and tell them to dance. They're just going to look at you and say, "What? What do you mean? What do I do?"
This
But
is true.
yeah, but if the absolute beginner is the follower,
Yeah.
put in a close hold position, you do some movements, you're having to give a very heavy lead and really exaggerate what they're supposed to do, but dance can happen. um but this, to me now, it really doesn't make sense why you would have absolute beginners leading, because just at that initial level, there's so much extra they have to do that they wouldn't have to do if they were following.
Hmm.
Just by following, you will get into repetition of all the moves that you really need to get to muscle memory before you can start, incorporating
Mm.
other things into the dance.
Yeah, I can see how that would work really well because then you are focusing on yourself and your body and receiving input. You are not having to create output and be responsible for your body.
Yeah.
Yes, I can see the value in that. That is very unique. I like it.
And it's I in teaching classes I do the way I do, I have found when I give everyone the opportunity to choose, the vast majority do generally pick to follow when they are just beginning. When
Mm.
they've had a few classes, maybe they've tried both, they think, oh, actually, yeah, it is easier. I do get some help in direction when I'm being led. The moves that happen, it's reaction to rather than planning and preparation and execution.
Mm.
Again, to reiterate, followers have as much variety and challenge and interesting areas of expression at higher levels, but just at that very, very important initial level, it is easier for the followers. I think this is important for a number of reasons. I would argue, again, separating out gender from the roles you dance is very important, but if you see any sort of dance community where there's more women than men in a scenario where the majority of the dances are being taught with traditional gender roles, it is worth asking why. You know, is this, oh, men just naturally don't like dancing as much as women, or is this actually the men are forced to lead at the start? They find it very, very difficult initially. They're struggling. The difficulty curve is really high, and so they get put off and don't stick with it. Whereas women are expected to follow, and they do that, and that's a nice way to gradually get them into the class where they are dancing uh, pretty much right from the start. Whereas the men who are leading, find it really difficult to get to that confidence level where they can start enjoying it and dance socially and feel good about it.
Yes, you've hit the nail on the head there. That move to dance socially, it can take a lot longer for a leader to get there
Yeah.
because in the foundations, I would agree there is more moving parts going on. There are
Yeah.
more balls in the air, whatever the phrase may be,
Hmm.
um, in those initial foundation phase of dancing. So
Yeah.
yeah, followers will often end up at socials quicker than a leader will feel comfortable to.
I read a lot of discussions online. There's a lot of really good subreddits for salsa, bachata, kizomba, and it's so common to see, oh, I've been doing dancing for months. I'm really struggling. I don't have the confidence. I've tried a few socials and it really didn't work out. And every time I'm thinking, guarantee this is a man. I read the description, more details. Yeah, it's a man trying to lead. You will get some followers who have difficulties or struggles or don't enjoy social dancing for a variety of reasons, and there are those issues. But like you said, the you go to a few classes as a follower, you can pretty much go to socials, and not only will you be okay, you will actually learn from that experience. You will learn from dancing with a variety of different leaders who aren't necessarily in the classes. If you're a lead and you go to a social early on, chances are you might do okay, but you're dancing with a variety of different follows. They're going to follow your moves. You're not necessarily going to learn much from that. You'll get to practice, and maybe if you're very lucky, the things that go wrong, you're aware of what's going wrong and why, and you can correct yourself. But
Mhm.
that is actually a very important skill in learning to lead, and it's not something that's focused on in the classes, unfortunately.
That's another good point you raised, that mistakes are not something we often focus on in lessons in terms of how to move through a mistake.
Yes, yes. I
Mhm.
think this the other thing, the two main objections to how dance classes are traditionally taught is partner up in terms of what it's doing for the assumed default gender roles and the fixation on routines.
Mhm.
I don't teach routines. I don't I think if you're going to dance classes and the majority of them are built around a routine, um, it's not the best way of teaching moves.
Okay.
Um, uh,
What for you is the best way?
so just to preempt this, I would say you don't want to be fixated on moves and routines in teaching dance. Dance needs to cover connection, frame, musicality, all these concepts that are very difficult to teach, very
Mm.
difficult to communicate. And it's, you know, absolutely, I agree. Just focusing just on the moves is not how you become a good dancer. But a routine is not an ideal way to teach dance because it fails to replicate in the class what's happening in the social. And I want to contrast routines in something like bachata or salsa, crossbody salsa mostly, versus the rueda in Cuban salsa.
Okay.
So I'm sure you've danced, you know, majority of your listeners will know the Rueda, but just so everyone's on board, in the Rueda, you have one caller, you've got a circle of couples. The caller will call what the next move is, everyone will do it, and then you go back to your default guapea move for the next call. In the dance class, that is what it looks like. You've got one caller, you'll do some basics, they'll call the moves, there may be a hand signal or whatever. Everyone is watching the caller, and then everyone tries to do the move. And in the class, the move is explained. You go through it a few times, try to get everyone to be able to do it together at the same time. Then in the dance social, there will also be a caller. There will be someone calling the move, everyone does the move, and then that's what happens. So the Rueda class does a great job of replicating what is happening in the social setting as what's been practiced in the class.
Mhm.
In a social, you are generally dancing with someone you haven't danced before, haven't necessarily done the class with. In the class, you're doing a class with everyone who's doing the class. So in that class, the leaders are doing a sequence of moves in the routine. The followers are doing that same sequence. Everyone is doing it at the same time, in the same progress, at the same timing, whether it's to the music, to what the instructor is calling, but everything is doing it together. In that class, the follower knows what's coming next. They have been told
Yeah.
they've been actually instructed to do the next move in the sequence. What can so you can be someone who will learn the sequence in a way that helps you, and that you will learn to lead the moves and give all the signals and make sure someone who doesn't know this routine will do these moves. But someone taking the class doesn't can complete that sequence in that class and then be completely unable to do it in a social because they're dancing with a follower who doesn't know the sequence.
Yeah. Yeah,
The
you often have that where the leaders are performing well in the lesson because oftentimes there's not an equal follower teacher perhaps, so they're not, the followers are, they know what to do, so they're doing it.
yeah,
There's not
yeah.
actually a dance happening between the two people.
There is a difference in who knows what between the class and the social.
Yeah.
And there doesn't need to be. So if you're wanting to teach routines, there is going to be. If you want to teach individual moves, things you can do in an 8 count, then you can get rid of that disparity. Um, I think, like I said, it's worth asking why things are done the way they are, to try and tease out, how did we arrive here, and more importantly, why isn't there any changes being made and being talked about? So
Mhm.
I think my personal opinion is that a lot of instructors are performers, and that a routine is the perfect way to teach a choreography that you're going to perform. And now in a class, there may very well be people who will go on to perform, and that is great, but that is a minority. That is a very small number of people.
Yeah.
Teaching your entire class the way that makes sense just for performers, to me, that doesn't make a lot of sense. I think dancing is taught primarily for social dancing. If you teach, for example, two ways to get into a particular position and two ways to get out of the position, then all of a sudden you give options. And now you have to teach, okay, the leader can do A or B. What is the leader doing to communicate that I want to do A versus I want to do B? And you've got two different options to get into, say, hammerlock position. And then once you're in that position, two different things you can do. Now, all of a sudden, the leader has to do something different to communicate that to the follower. And the follower can't just do the next thing in the sequence because there's multiple options.
Yes.
To me, this is a approach that makes sense to how to teach, because it tries to replicate. Okay, in the social scenario, the follower doesn't know what's coming next. In the
Mhm.
class, okay, we've narrowed it down. In the social, there's like so many options, different dances with so many different moves. It's not quite infinite, but it's a lot of different possibilities. In the class, we might be looking at two or three different options, but that's still, at the very least, you want to have, okay, we could do our basic, we could keep doing basic, or we could do something else at this point, or we could do a third thing. What are the three different signals I'm giving that I'm about to do that? How do I execute those differently? How do I make sure the follower knows? And so you want to try to have in your class mistakes happen, that
Okay.
a leader will fail to lead a move, um, and it's either the leader doesn't give a clear signal or the follower doesn't respond to that signal. And when those mistakes happen, the instructor can come in and say, "Hooray, a mistake has happened. This is something that's we don't want to happen on the social dance floor. Let's try and tease this apart. What can we do to make sure clear signals are being provided and received and understood and being acted upon?" We fix that, and then you go onto the social dance floor, and then everyone is dancing perfectly.
That makes a lot of sense to break it down that way. Yeah, so if we think about not all teachers, but when teaching became popularized for salsa, initially these would have been performers. People want to learn from the greats. So that progression where you've gone from performer to teacher, And then as more teachers start teaching and perhaps haven't done performing, they're looking to their own teachers or their idols that they look up to. And so I can see how that would create the system that we have. Is a very plausible way that it has developed.
Yeah, I don't think there's any sort of deliberate attempt to teach the wrong way for any reason. Like I said, ruedas are taught the best way you could teach. It's exactly replicating in the classroom what you want, what's going to happen in social. So there are it can happen that dances is being taught well. I think yeah, the simplest explanation is people teach the way they themselves were taught, and as a lecturer, I know this is definitely to be true. You have to work to change your teaching methods. If you've been taught one way, you generally think, oh, this is definitely the best way to be taught. If someone can teach a fun class that makes you a little better at dancing, that is great, but at the same time, we should be asking why things that are important in the dance are not being taught in the classes. I think um, instructors that can heed these words, that want to play around with changing what they do, would be great. I think what would be really good would be to encourage people to vote with their wallets. So ask some questions. If you're going to classes and it's regularly just routines, no specific instruction on how a leader can lead one particular move different than another to indicate the follower that they want this move to happen. If that isn't part of the teaching, ask the question of the instructor, when do you teach this? Why isn't this being taught? If you don't teach this, do you know another instructor that does teach this? It is absolutely the case that people who go to classes should, where they have the option. I'm here in Manchester. There's so many different classes, instructors, got spoiled for choice. If you are in a place where there's only one instructor, that is unfortunate. You're kind of stuck with that. But if you have the option, if you can go to different instructors and say, yeah, I want to dance. I either want to lead, I want to follow. Are you actually teaching the specifics of how you can lead someone to communicate the different moves you want to do? If that's not included, okay, I will go to some instructor that does. Also, ideally, if you want to not necessarily dance in the traditional gender roles, and a class is welcoming and encouraging that is great. If they're not, vote with your wallet, find somewhere that does.
Yeah, I think those are great questions to ask ourselves. Some of us may align directly with the questions you've posed. Some of us may think about this and then go, actually, there are other questions I want to ask and learn about, because when we start off, we don't know what questions to ask. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
having this mindset of questioning what we want out of something, what does the teacher want out of this lesson, and starting to ask ourselves these questions is a great way to educate, to make our dance experience better, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. It's worth having these things talked about. Try to get dancers at all levels asking these questions, trying to improve. I think it's reflection and self-improvement is always, they're always good things. Trying to encourage that. I've danced with some amazing dancers, some amazing instructors that I really enjoy, but nobody's perfect. Nobody's the absolute without flaw in any way. So it's always good to
Of
think
course
about
not. Yeah, that
how.
wouldn't that wouldn't be human.
No, no. So it's always way to think about what can be changed, and changing things up and doing things differently. It inevitably is going to lead to failure. You'll make some changes and it just doesn't work. It just, doing it a different way doesn't help. It makes things more confusing, or just the audience does not actually want that, and that is
Yeah.
fine. You try different things, you see what works and what doesn't, and you adapt and evolve.
We're all learning, exactly. Well, Thomas, thank you very much for coming and sharing your views on the simple ways we can open the doors to remove the gendered roles that we have in dancing, to question the way we're teaching and why it's become the way it has become. I think that's a great way to try and look back and ask, why do we teach in this way? It's working, but is there a better way? This sense of questioning, questions we can ask ourselves to improve our learning, improve our experiences in lessons, and our dancing journey as a whole. Thank you very, very much for bringing your experience and points of view.
Thank you for having me on. It's been my pleasure.
Take care, Thomas. We will speak to you soon.
Bye bye.